Welcome to another how-to video, and today I'm going to make an updated version on how to solder and install model train flex track. In this video I'm going to be installing a piece of flex track right here where this empty piece of cork is, down to the switch. I'm also going to show you how to solder it here to this point, and how to install some hidden feeder wires. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a piece of flex track, two colors of wires, probably red and black, a marker of some color that will be easy to see, a file, an X-Acto knife, some rosin core solder, some electrical flux, some wire cutters and wire strippers, and a way to secure the track down. That can be either track pins, caulk, hot glue, whatever you prefer, but today I'm going to be showing you using some caulk. So go ahead and get started. First thing you're going to need to do is figure out how long your piece of flex track is. So here's the piece of track I'll be laying down. First thing you're going to want to do is figure out how long it's going to be, at least approximately. So here we go, I have it down on the end there. If you look down here, it's going to take a marker. I'm using a pink marker here. It's pretty easy to see, so it's not going to get hidden up by the caulk or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and mark approximately where the flex track ends, which is right about there. So next, what you're going to do is want to figure out where you're going to install your feeder wires. I'm using modular sections, so I can only do it in certain locations, so I'm going to do it about in the middle of this track here, probably around here. So what I'm going to do is figure out where I want them to be. So I'm going to say probably here. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 marks in the cork and marks on my piece of track, like so. And that way we'll know where to cut out some ties for the feeder wire. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and remove the piece of track. I'm going to go ahead and take a drill. You can either use power. I'm just going to use this manual drill since I have it handy. So go ahead and take it and put it on, probably a little bit on the inside. You're going to want it right under the rails. Go ahead and drill a hole through the wood or foam if you're using that on each side. There we go. Shouldn't be too hard. There we go. Got 2 holes for the feeders to run through. So I went ahead and took the piece of flex track off onto a flat surface here. So next we're going to want to cut away a tie on either side of the pink mark here, which is where the X-Acto knife will come in. So I'm going to go ahead and just, right here, go ahead and flip that over. And right here was where our mark was, so I'll just cut on either side of that. I want to take about 2 ties off, and the track will should just peel right off. There we go. And it's almost under, so I'll just cut one off here. You want to keep these because you will be able to reuse them later and fill in the big gap you just created. So you also want to go ahead and take off the last 2 ties on either end. Go ahead and take those off. Come down to the other side. There we go. And then take these 2 off. And make sure you keep them. There we go. So we have now prepared the flex track for the most part. Next, you're going to want to flip the track over, and this is where the soldering iron and other soldering utilities will come in. So I have some flux, some solder in my soldering iron. So what you're going to want to do is take a little bit of flux, just a little bit, and just put a little bit on the track here. We're going to go ahead and pre-tin the track so we can install the feeder wires to the underside of the rail where you won't be able to see them. So we're going to go ahead and heat it up a little bit. Don't need too much solder on there, just enough to hold down the wires. I want to do it on both rails. Make sure you don't hold it too long or you'll start to melt the ties. There we go. So that's good. We got the track prepared. Then next time for the wires. So right here I just have some 18 gauge wire, or 22 gauge wire for the feeder wires. I have it in red and black here. So the length of wire you'll need will vary on your layout. So I don't need too long of feeder wire, so I'll just do it about this length here. Should be good. And cut that. And I'll do the same length for the red wire. Barely have enough here. There we go. Cut that. And for me, I'm using suitcase connectors to connect the other end, so I just need to strip one side of each wire here. There we go. You don't need to strip off too much. You don't need that much exposed. So go ahead and take the flux again, and we're going to go ahead and tin the wires. Get a little flux on each side. You don't need too much. There we go. And for this I'll just get a little solder on the soldering iron and just touch it there, let it heat up for a second, and it'll flow all in. There we go. Pretty simple. And next I'll go ahead and take something to put a 90-degree bend in each side. There we go. Do it for the same for the other one. Get this stuff out of the way. Alright, so we're back to our piece of track now. And you'll want to make sure you put the right wire on the correct rail if you're using DCC. So you need to remember, if you're doing it upside down, you're going to flip it over and it's going to be reversed to what you do it. So for what I need the red wire to be on this side, so it'll be on this rail, because it's reversed when we're soldering it. So go ahead and take this in. Go ahead and solder this on. Make sure it's secure. There we go. Take our other wire. And there we go. So our piece of track is now prepared, and we're on to laying it. So we're on to the portion of laying the flex track. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by laying down some caulk and preparing that before we put the piece of track down. It's much easier to do it before rather than after. You want to make sure you use enough to hold it down, but not too much to where it's running all over the place. So that's where our line that came in. Just want to put it up to that line. and all the way down. Go ahead and use petty knife here and just spread it all out. Make sure you have a nice smooth coverage over the entire distance. Making sure there's no lumps or anything in the caulk. And if you're using track nails, you'll just have to drill out the little holes on the underside when you are prepping the track. And then use those. And if you're using hot glue, you just probably want to work in smaller sections, laying that down. There we go. And pretty even layer of caulk here. If you're doing it on a curve, you might want to use a little bit more, just to make sure the track doesn't move out of place over time. There we go. So next, we're going to want to solder the track to where we are going to be connecting it to. So this is where we're going to be installing our piece of flex track here, right on the point of that, or the end of that switch. So we're going to go ahead and start off by installing the rail joiners on the end of this piece of flex track here. You're going to just take them and slide them on. You can either do it to the piece of flex track, or I could do it to the piece of track that I am installing it on. But I find this to be the easiest way. So there we go. You want to make sure it's going to be pretty straight when you solder it down to avoid any kinks in the rail. There we go. Make sure this is seated in there properly. Looks like for this location I'm going to have to remove some of the ties here on the other piece of track. Let's go ahead and remove a couple of these here. About 3, that should be good. Yep, that's not incorrect. There's a little bit of a bump. Go ahead and redo that. You want to make sure that they're smooth when you run your fingers across it. Yep. Nice and smooth here. Make sure it's seated nicely. So now we're going to go ahead and take our flux once again. And we're just going to put a little bit on each joint. You don't need too much. Just to make sure the solder flows properly into the rail joint. There we go. So you're going to go ahead and take your soldering iron and just a little bit of solder here. Just go ahead, heat up your joint. Apply a little bit of solder. You don't need too much here. You don't want it flowing everywhere. This isn't going to be a high stress area, so that should be good. Go ahead and do the same to the other side. It can be a little bit tricky not being able to see what you're doing. There we go. Make sure you don't do it too long or you'll start to melt the ties. And there we go. So our joint is now soldered there. And now it's time to run the feeder wires through their holes. So here we have the location where we put our 2 holes in the cork and sub-road bed. So we're going ahead and take each wire, just stick it through the hole here. There we go. Make sure our flex track's in the proper location. And you can go ahead and pull the wires from underneath if you can reach them. There we go. Then it just pulls it down. So you're going to want to make sure your flex track is in the proper location all along the line here. And you want to make sure it's straight as it can be if it's supposed to be straight. There we go. Looks pretty good. And once you have it in the proper location, you can go ahead and probably take some weight. I'm just using some scrap 2x4s I have laying around. Here we go. And there you go. Once you let that dry and make sure it's nice and secure before you take that off, and you'll have a piece of flex track. It's been laid down in feeder wires. You just have to do that all along your line, and you'll have a good running layout. So if you have any suggestions about the video, leave them in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos, you can either leave a comment or send me a message, and I'll do the best I can to get a video about that. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.